When people hear space race, they usually imagine rockets, astronauts, and moon landings. But the real starting point was not wonder. It was fear. After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union became superpower rivals with opposite political systems and growing military suspicion. Both understood that long-range rocket technology could determine strategic survival in a nuclear age. The same propulsion and guidance systems needed to launch a satellite could also be used for intercontinental ballistic missiles. That overlap gave every space milestone two meanings at once: scientific progress and military signal. In this environment, spaceflight became a public scoreboard for power. If one side could put payloads in orbit reliably, it suggested deep technical competence in engines, navigation, staging, and command systems. So before humans ever reached the moon, space had already become part of Cold War logic. It was a place where prestige, deterrence, and ideology were tested in front of the entire world. Public interest in space travel had been rising through magazines and youth publications in the early 1950s, but popular curiosity alone does not create geopolitical urgency. The turning point came in 1955. The United States announced plans to launch artificial satellites for the International Geophysical Year, a scientific effort with global participation. Just 5 days later, the Soviet Union answered that it would also launch a satellite soon. That quick response transformed a scientific initiative into strategic competition. Each side understood that being first would carry symbolic value far beyond research. A successful launch would show industrial capacity, scientific discipline, and national confidence. It would also hint at the maturity of missile-related technology. From that moment forward, timelines mattered. Government planners, engineers, military analysts, and journalists all tracked progress as if watching parallel campaigns. What had been a technical ambition now became a test of which system could convert knowledge into visible achievement under pressure. The Soviet launch of Sputnik 1 on October 4, 1957, changed global perception almost instantly. Technically, Sputnik was a small satellite transmitting radio beeps. Politically, those beeps sounded like a warning. In the West, especially in the United States, many interpreted the launch as evidence that the USSR had overtaken America in critical technology. This reaction became known as the Sputnik crisis. The fear was not only symbolic embarrassment. If the Soviets could place an object in orbit, they might also have the capability to deliver warheads across continents. Public anxiety surged, and policy debates intensified around education, science funding, and defense readiness. Sputnik also altered the cultural imagination. Space was no longer speculative fiction or distant fantasy. It was operational reality, and it had arrived under a rival flag. In one event, the Soviet Union captured initiative, shaped global headlines, and forced the United States to accelerate institutional and technological responses. If Sputnik made orbit real, Yuri Gagarin made space personal. On April 12, 1961, the Soviet Union launched Vostok 1, sending Gagarin into orbit as the first human in space. This was a profound escalation in symbolic impact. A machine circling Earth is impressive. A person doing it creates emotional and political resonance on another level. Gagarin's flight demonstrated not just rocket power but integrated mission capability, life support, biomedical confidence, communication, re-entry planning, and mission control under unprecedented conditions. Around the world, the mission was celebrated as a Soviet triumph in modernity and courage. In the United States, it sharpened concern that early prestige victories were slipping away. Cold War competition was as much about narrative as hardware, and the Soviet narrative now featured consecutive firsts. Gagarin became a global icon, and his mission reinforced the idea that space achievements could reshape international psychology almost overnight. The American strategic reset came quickly. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy asked Congress to commit the nation to landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth before the decade ended. This was a carefully chosen challenge. Rather than trying to replay Soviet firsts, the United States selected a much harder objective that required end-to-end mastery. The moon goal demanded sustained investment, institutional coordination, and acceptance of high risk. It also redefined success, not just reaching a target, but completing a full mission profile with safe return. That phrase mattered. It emphasized reliability, discipline, and engineering depth, not a one-moment stunt. By attaching a clear deadline, Kennedy created urgency that could guide budgets, research priorities, workforce expansion, and national attention. The announcement converted abstract ambition into measurable obligation. It told the world that the contest would now be decided on a larger stage, where scale, systems thinking, and long-term execution would matter most. To reach the moon, the United States had to solve a massive engineering puzzle: how to launch enough mass, operate in lunar space, land humans, and bring them back alive. The Saturn V rocket became the backbone of that plan. Its scale was extraordinary, but size alone was not the story. Success required synchronized performance across thousands of components, staged propulsion events, precision guidance, and mission operations with almost no margin for error. The broader Apollo architecture also mattered: command module, service module, and lunar lander, each with specialized roles and strict sequencing. Every stage depended on previous stages working correctly. This forced advances in quality control, systems integration, simulation, and decision protocols under uncertainty. Apollo became a model of complex project management under national deadline pressure. It showed how political commitment can mobilize technical ecosystems, from manufacturing lines to computing labs, when a goal is concrete, public, and non-negotiable. In July 1969, Apollo 11 met Kennedy's target. Humans landed on the moon and returned safely to Earth, completing the mission standard set 8 years earlier. The achievement was immediately interpreted as a decisive American victory in the space race. But its importance runs deeper than geopolitical scoring. Apollo 11 proved that a nation could execute an extremely complex, multi-phase mission across hundreds of thousands of kilometers with disciplined precision. It validated years of engineering iteration, operational planning, and institutional learning under public scrutiny. It also reshaped global imagination. For many people, seeing humans walk on another world expanded the boundary of what seemed possible in science and governance. At the same time, Apollo 11 did not erase Soviet accomplishments or end space competition overnight. Instead, it shifted the narrative center. Early Soviet firsts had defined the beginning of the race. The American moon landing defined its most dramatic turning point. The Soviet Union did not ignore the lunar challenge. It pursued crewed moon ambitions and developed the N-1 heavy-lift rocket, aiming to place cosmonauts on the lunar surface. But these efforts failed to produce a successful crewed lunar mission. While technical failures are central to that outcome, institutional dynamics also mattered. Projects of this scale require stable priorities, effective testing culture, and consistent systems integration over time. When those factors weaken, complexity compounds problems quickly. After setbacks in the crewed lunar effort, Soviet strategy shifted toward other domains where leadership was still possible. This included the Salyut program, the first space stations, and major robotic exploration efforts, including landings on Venus and Mars. That pivot is historically important because it reveals that the space race was not a single-lane sprint. It was a broad technological rivalry where prestige could be regained through different pathways, not only through matching Apollo's exact mission profile. Meanwhile, the United States continued with additional Apollo moon landings after Apollo 11, demonstrating that lunar success could be repeated rather than treated as a one-time spectacle. Repetition mattered for credibility. It suggested operational maturity and mission reliability, not merely isolated luck. These later missions expanded scientific returns and refined human activity beyond Earth. Yet even successful programs face political limits. As the 1970s progressed, domestic priorities, budget constraints, and changing strategic narratives reduced appetite for long lunar campaigns. This tension between technical capability and political sustainability is one of the enduring lessons of the space race. A country can achieve astonishing breakthroughs, but maintaining momentum requires continuous public justification and policy alignment. By this stage, both superpowers were reassessing costs, risks, and strategic value. Space remained important, but the logic of constant symbolic escalation started to soften, opening room for selective collaboration in areas once defined purely by rivalry. A visible shift arrived with détente. In 1972, the United States and the Soviet Union agreed to the Apollo-Soyuz test project, culminating in a 1975 orbital docking between American astronauts and Soviet cosmonauts. The iconic handshake in space symbolized a change in tone, but the deeper significance was technical and procedural. Cooperation required compatible docking systems, shared operational planning, and mutual trust in mission-critical standards. The APAS-75 docking framework represented more than hardware, it represented negotiated interoperability between former adversaries. Teams had to bridge language, design philosophy, and institutional culture shaped by decades of secrecy and competition. Apollo-Soyuz did not erase geopolitical conflict, but it proved that space could support controlled cooperation even in a divided world. Many observers view it as the final act of the classic space race, where direct prestige rivalry gave way to pragmatic collaboration without fully ending strategic caution. The long transition from rivalry to partnership accelerated after the Soviet Union collapsed. The United States and the Russian Federation moved into deeper joint programs, including Shuttle-Mir and later the International Space Station. These efforts institutionalized cooperation through shared operations, logistics, crew exchanges, and long-duration mission planning. In historical perspective, this was remarkable. Systems originally advanced by Cold War competition were now sustaining a multinational outpost in orbit. The space race legacy is therefore paradoxical. It emerged from military tension and ideological conflict, yet it generated capabilities that eventually supported scientific collaboration across national lines. It also left a durable political lesson: space achievements are never purely technical. They are shaped by fear, ambition, narrative, institutions, and diplomacy at every stage. Understanding that full context helps explain why the space race still matters today. It was not only a contest about who got to space first. It was a transformation in how humanity organizes power, risk, and possibility beyond Earth. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.